I slept with the supreme executive of the Federation, Theodore. My goal was to obtain his S-class pheromones to treat my genetic disease. After the deed was done, I ran, leaving a single coin on his nightstand. Consider it payment for his services. I thought my plan was flawless, until 3 months later, when I was caught red-handed buying suppressants on the black market. Theodore pressed the barrel of his gun against the back of my head, his voice bone-chillingly cold. Found you at last, Ezra. I was not at all satisfied with that $1 tip you left that night. I instinctively protected my stomach. For no other reason than, this one time I actually managed to create a life. Chapter 1. When Theodore caught me, I was throwing up, propped against the filthy base of a black market wall. I was dry heaving so hard I nearly threw up my bile. Being pregnant was just too absurd for a man who had lived as an alpha for 26 years. I should have just killed Theodore back then, instead of having a moment of weakness and sleeping with him as if he were an antidote. Done puking? A voice as cold as ice came from above me. My spine stiffened. I didn't need to look up to know who it was. That pheromone scent, like frozen earth after a blizzard, you couldn't find a second person in the entire Federation who had it. Theodore, the supreme executive of the Federation, the S-Class Alpha known as the Mad Dog. Also my former partner, and my current mortal enemy. I wiped my mouth, slowly stood up straight, and turned to flash him a grin. Yo, Commander Theodore. Long time no see. Missed me that much? Theodore didn't smile. Behind him stood an entire squad of fully armed special forces, their muzzles aimed squarely at my head. This kind of grand spectacle was a bit too extravagant even for my funeral. Theodore's fingers, clad in black leather gloves, rested on the holster at his waist. His dark, brooding eyes swept over me, finally stopping on my stomach. My heart skipped a beat. I was wearing loose clothes, and my belly wasn't too obvious yet, but those eyes of his were as venomous as a snake's. Your skills have slipped, Ezra. You used to be able to smell me from 3 streets away. Now I'm standing right behind you, and you're still dealing with morning sickness. The word he used was morning sickness, not throwing up. My pupils contracted slightly, and the dagger in my hand quietly slid into my palm. My stomach's been bad lately. Ate something wrong. What, is Commander Theodore going to manage my diet now too? Theodore sneered. The next second he struck without warning. In the past, I could have gone 300 rounds with him. But now, first, my legs were weak from puking. Second, between the aftereffects of my genetic disease and the little guy in my belly, my physical stamina right now was worse than a beta's. I only had time to raise my arm to block. Crack. A sharp pain shot through my wrist. Just like that, he twisted my arms behind my back and slammed me ruthlessly against the grime-covered wall. Ugh, Theodore, you son of a bee. Shoo! The cold barrel of a gun pressed against the back of my head. Theodore leaned in close to my ear, his voice freezing. Finally caught you. Ezra. I was not at all satisfied with that $1 tip you left that night. I was taken back to the Federation's 3rd prison. This place was specially designed to hold S-class felons, known as the Tomb of the Living. And I got to enjoy the highest level of treatment, interrogation personally conducted by Theodore. The heating wasn't turned on in the interrogation room. It was cold enough to make a person shiver. I was locked into a specially made interrogation chair, my hands and feet shackled dead tight. These shackles could suppress pheromones. If you struggled by force, they would release high-voltage electric shocks. Theodore sat across from me, methodically cleaning his gun. That was a birthday gift I had given him in the past. I didn't expect him to keep it until now, let alone plan to use it against me. Ezra, 3 years as a defector, and this is what you've been reduced to? He looked up at me, his gaze critical. I really was a mess right now, stripped of my outer clothes, leaving only a thin t-shirt underneath. Because of the violent struggle earlier, my abdomen throbbed with a dull ache. I gritted my teeth, forcing down the waves of nausea welling up in my throat. I'm doing all right, I forced a smirk. Aren't I back to visit family? Visit family? Theodore looked as if he had heard a joke. Visit who? The former partner you shot through the shoulder and left in the ruins. Theodore had a penetrating wound on his body. I was the one who caused it. 3 years ago, the precursors of my genetic breakdown began to show. To avoid holding him back, and to search for a banned drug only available on the black market, I orchestrated my defection. I avoided his vitals with that shot, but I didn't expect him to hold a grudge until now. That was an accident. The gun went off. Bang! Theodore slammed his hand heavily on the table. An accident? So you infiltrating my quarters, drugging me, and sleeping with me like I was some male escort for a night. Was that an accident too? I hadn't expected things to turn out like that either. 3 months ago, I needed to get Theodore's bone marrow fluid or highly concentrated pheromones to use as a medicinal primer. I snuck into his quarters originally just wanting to draw a vial of his blood. Who knew I would happen to run right into his susceptibility period breaking out? The whole room was filled with that scent that could drive a person insane. I was an alpha on the verge of genetic collapse. Provoked by that top-tier oppressive presence, I actually experienced an acute rejection reaction right on the spot. I lost control too. There was only one thought in my mind. I want him. Everything after that was a blur. I only remember the biting, the tangling of our bodies, and him calling my name in the heat of passion. But I couldn't admit it. If I admitted it, not only would I lose this child, but I'd also be a dead man. Commander Theodore, you need evidence when you speak. I stared into his eyes, pretending to be calm. Your quarters are heavily guarded. How could I have gotten in? Furthermore, I am an alpha, you are an alpha. How could two grown men possibly sleep together? Theodore narrowed his eyes. You are an alpha? He suddenly reached out, probing toward the gland at the back of my neck. A heavy-duty blocker patch was stuck there. Ezra, the scent of your pheromones has changed. It used to smell like strong liquor, but now. He leaned in close and sniffed, his brow furrowing. Why does it smell like milk? Chapter 2. A wave of panic hit me. That was the unique scent of a pregnant omega. Even a blocker patch couldn't completely cover it. It's a new type of cologne. You wouldn't understand. Is that so? Theodore sneered. His fingers suddenly exerted force, moving to rip off the blocker patch. Then let me get a good smell and see exactly what brand this cologne is. Don't touch it. I panicked, struggling violently. If he discovered that my gland had mutated into an omega's form, everything would be over. Sensing my struggle, the shackles instantly released a high-voltage electric shock. ZZZT. Ugh! Agony instantly swept through my entire body. My vision went black, and I slumped into the chair, twitching all over. The electrical current didn't just stimulate my nerves. It also aggravated that already unstable reproductive cavity. It felt like someone had viciously kicked me in the stomach. It hurt so much I curled in on myself, cold sweat instantly soaking my back. Ezra! Theodore seemingly hadn't expected me to react so strongly. He immediately cut the power and reached out to pat my face. Don't play dead. That was barely anything. I didn't have the energy to play dead. I was in genuine pain. I could even feel as if something was slowly slipping away from me. Medicine. I grabbed his sleeve. Give me my medicine. What medicine? Theodore's face changed. He probably realized something was very wrong. My body temperature was dropping rapidly, and my lips had already turned a bruised purple. I have a genetic disease. I need suppressants. I stammered out half-truths. I couldn't say I needed anti-miscarriage medication. If I said that, it would mean 2 dead bodies instead of 1. Theodore stared at me dead on, his eyes dark and unreadable. Just when I thought he was going to watch me die from the pain, he suddenly turned and pulled a syringe from the drawer of the interrogation desk. It was a military-grade emergency shot. He didn't hesitate to plunge it into the jugular vein on the side of my neck. The icy, biting liquid was pushed in. The pain eased slightly. I gasped heavily for air, like a fish just pulled out of the water. Theodore tossed the syringe aside and pinched my chin again. Ezra, what exactly are you hiding from me? I've checked your physical data. The constitution of an S-class alpha couldn't possibly collapse from that little bit of electricity. Unless... His gaze moved down again, fixing on my abdomen. It was still spasming from the pain. Unless your physical anatomy has changed. Take your clothes off. What? I froze for a second. I said, take your clothes off. Theodore stood up straight. Or do you want me to do it myself? Right here? Theodore, are you crazy? I can do whatever I want, wherever I want. He didn't give me a chance to refuse at all. He reached right out and grabbed the hem of my t-shirt. The fabric tore open. My upper body was exposed to the air. There was nothing romantic or suggestive about it, because my body was covered in scars. Knife wounds, gunshot wounds, burn marks, crisscrossing like an ugly web. Theodore's gaze didn't linger on those old scars. He stared at my lower abdomen. There was a slight, subtle bulge there. If you didn't look closely, you might just think it was a loss of muscle tone. But Theodore reached out and placed his hand over it. I shuddered all over, instinctively wanting to shrink back, but there was nowhere to run. What is this? His voice was trembling, laced with extreme shock and disbelief. A hard lump? A tumor? He pressed down on it. I let out a muffled groan. The little guy inside seemed to sense the approach of its other half's bloodline, and actually moved a little at that exact moment. A very faint flutter, but Theodore froze. It moved? I closed my eyes in despair. It was over. This time it was truly over. Ezra. Theodore's voice was hoarse, carrying an emotion of sheer disbelief. Are you pregnant? An alpha pregnant? Since I couldn't hide it anymore, there was no need to keep pretending. Yes. I opened my eyes and looked at him provocatively. If you don't believe me, you can cut me open right now and see if it's a freak or a miracle. Whose is it? He thought I had been messing around with other men out there, getting pregnant and then coming back to disgust him. I suddenly found it a bit funny. Well, it's not yours, anyway. I deliberately provoked him. A place like the black market. You know how it is. To survive, sometimes you have to pay a certain price. Shut up. He gripped my neck fiercely, his eyes bloodshot. Ezra, how dare you? How dare you let another alpha touch you? A feeling of suffocation surged up. My vision darkened, but a smile still hung on the corners of my mouth. Cough. Commander Theodore. We broke up a long time ago. Whoever I'm with is none of your business. I forbid it. Theodore looked like he had gone mad, his pheromones violently flooding the entire space. You are mine. Even if you die, you are mine. Whose bastard is that? I'll kill him. I'll tear him to pieces. His grip tightened more and more. I was really going to be strangled to death. The fetus in my womb sensed the danger and began to move violently. It hurt so much, 100 times more painful than being electrocuted just now. Ugh! Unable to bear it any longer, I let out a groan of pain. That sound seemed to restore a bit of Theodore's sanity. He looked at my deathly pale face and my eyes, which were beginning to lose focus, and abruptly let go. Cough, cough, cough. I coughed violently, greedily breathing in the air. Theodore took 2 steps back, his chest heaving heavily. He looked at his own hands, then at me curled up in agony, confusion and fear flashing through his eyes. Ezra. Covered in cold sweat from the pain, I gritted my teeth and cursed. Theodore, if you're going to kill me, just kill me. Don't torture me. Medic. Theodore roared toward the door. Get a military medic over here. Now. I'd like to see who dares to come in. Theodore, if you dare let anyone else touch me, I'll kill myself right in front of you. I was still clutching the broken half of the dagger blade in my hand. I pressed it against my carotid artery. Let me go. Impossible. Theodore refused without a second thought. With your current physical condition, walking out that door means death. Staying here is what means death. I stared at him. Theodore, I'm a deformed, second-time differentiated Omega. This child is a monster. It's sucking the life out of me. You need top-tier alpha pheromones to stabilize you. Aside from me, no one can save you. Theodore had calmed down. Ezra, regardless of whose child this is, we are saving your life first. Once you are healed, a ruthless intensity shone in his eyes. I will personally rip this bastard out of you, and then I will find your man and tear him to pieces. I looked at him. My heart was a tangled mess of emotions. Are you going to tear yourself to pieces? Idiot. But I didn't dare say it. This child was his. If I let him know the truth, given his obsession with bloodlines and his desire to control me, this child definitely wouldn't live to see tomorrow. Furthermore, he would lock me up for the rest of my life. Ah! A sudden, tearing agony shot through my abdomen. My vision went completely black, and I lost consciousness. But in the final second before passing out, I heard Theodore's panicked shouts. Ezra! Ezra! And in that fleeting moment, the trembling embrace that held me tight. Chapter 3. When I woke up again, I was lying on a bed in the infirmary. There were no shackles on my hands and feet, but there was an extra collar around my neck. It was the kind of suppression collar equipped with GPS tracking and electric shock functions. Theodore was sitting by the bed, peeling an apple. Seeing me awake, he cut a slice of the peeled apple and held it to my lips. Eat. I didn't open my mouth, watching him warily. It's not poisoned. He took a bite himself, chewing loudly. Suddenly, he said, The child is still there. I froze for a moment, instinctively reaching for my stomach. Why didn't you abort it? Theodore threw the rest of the apple onto a plate and wiped his hands with a tissue. The doctor said your reproductive cavity is underdeveloped and the walls are too thin. If we force an abortion now, the probability of severe hemorrhaging is 90%. He looked up at me, his gaze icy. I don't want you to die on the operating table. That would be letting you off too easy. So you plan to let me give birth? Give birth. And then I'll strangle it right in front of your face. A chill ran down my spine. This mad dog was truly capable of doing that. I took a deep breath. Theodore, let's make a deal. I'll help you find the person who broke into your place, and you let me and the child go. Theodore's movements paused. You know who that person is? Of course. I lied casually. I saw him in the black market. He's also an alpha, and his disguise skills are brilliant. Oh, Theodore leaned in close to me. Then tell me, why does that person have the exact same beautiful peach blossom eyes as you? I stopped talking. This guy was baiting me. Theodore reached out and gently patted my stomach. Ezra, do you really think I'm an idiot? Although the security footage from that night was deleted, you left behind quite a few biological samples. I ran a DNA comparison. My heart skipped a beat. I'm doomed. The results aren't out yet, Theodore added unhurriedly. However, I have plenty of time to wait. Until the results are out, you will stay here obediently and rest for the pregnancy. If you dare to run, he pointed to the collar on my neck. This thing can only be unlocked with my fingerprint. If you dare take a single step out of this room, it will explode. It will blow this pretty head of yours into a smashed watermelon. I was placed under house arrest, right under Theodore's nose. I have to admit, apart from his vicious mouth and ruthless heart, this mad dog actually knew a thing or two about taking care of people. 3 meals a day consisted entirely of top-tier nutritious food, and he insisted on watching me finish every bite. He released his pheromones without any reservation to soothe my restless reproductive cavity. My body right now was like a bottomless pit, greedily absorbing his scent. Sometimes, waking up in the middle of the night, I would find him sleeping right next to me. Not sleeping back to back like we used to, but circling me in his arms like a plush doll, his hand protectively resting over my stomach. Even in his sleep, he would unconsciously rub his chin against my hair. This gave me an illusion, as if we hadn't separated, as if these 3 years had just been a dream, as if we were truly like an ordinary alpha-omega couple, anticipating the arrival of a new life. But when I was wide awake, I knew this was a dead end. Once the DNA report came out, once he knew this child was his, and the very tool I used to exploit him, what awaited me would absolutely be an imprisonment worse than death. I had to run. The opportunity came quickly. Theodore had to attend a high-level Federation meeting and would be away for 3 days. He tripled the guards, turning the entire building into an iron fortress. But he underestimated the survival instincts of a former S-Class agent. On the second night after he left, I pried open the ventilation duct. That collar was a problem, but I took a gamble. I gambled that Theodore wouldn't actually dare to blow me up. I tampered with the collar sensor, using a thin steel wire pulled from the mattress to short-circuit its signal transmitter. I only had 3 minutes. After 3 minutes, the system would report an error, and Theodore would receive an alert. I had to dash out of this building and jump into the moat within 3 minutes. Everything went smoothly, until I climbed out of the vent and stood on the rooftop, ready to jump. A familiar voice that made my scalp tingle sounded from behind me. Ezra, where are you going with my child? I turned around stiffly. In the pouring rain, Theodore hadn't gone to the meeting. He stood in the curtain of rain wearing that black trench coat, holding a freshly printed document report in his hand. He held up the report, the paper trembling in the wind and rain. Match rate, 100%. He grinned, revealing stark white teeth. Ezra, you've got a lot of nerve. You slept with me, got pregnant with my child, and lied to me saying it was another man's? Tell me, how should I punish you? I took a step back, my heels already dangling in the air. Below was a 100-meter drop into a raging river. Theodore, I don't owe you anything. I shouted loudly, my voice drowned out by the storm. I paid you back for that shot 3 years ago. This child can also be considered my repayment to you. What are you using to repay me? Theodore roared back furiously, tossing the report aside and charging toward me with large strides. You belong to me. Your life is mine. The child is mine too. Come here. In your dreams. I didn't want to be his caged bird anymore, and I certainly didn't want to be a tool for giving birth. I tilted my head back and spread my arms wide. Just at the exact moment Theodore was about to grasp my fingertips, I fell backward. The wind howled in my ears. I saw Theodore lunge to the edge of the roof, half of his body leaning over the drop. On that historically cold and indifferent face, an expression called despair appeared for the very first time. Ezra, Chapter 4. In that moment, I actually felt a dark sense of satisfaction. Do mad dogs feel pain too? Then hurt. This is the final lesson I'll ever teach you. The instant my body smashed into the freezing river water, it felt as though all my internal organs had shifted out of place. Before the intense pain even registered in my brain, the biting cold water flooded my nasal cavity. The moat's water was filthy, a mix of industrial waste oil and the stench of decay. I was sinking. My consciousness went blank for a second, darkness rushing over me like a tidal wave. My body was repeatedly pulled between weightlessness and heavy pressure. Is this what dying feels like? It was actually somewhat relaxing. No more hiding from trackers, no more enduring the torture of a genetic disease, and no more having to look at Theodore's eyes that constantly wanted to swallow me alive. Just as I was ready to completely give up and sink into the mud at the bottom of the river, a sharp, piercing spasm suddenly shot through my abdomen. The pain was peculiar. Not sharp and clean like a knife wound, nor searing hot like a gunshot. It was a desperate struggle imbued with vitality. That tiny life, still in its embryonic stage, was protesting. It didn't want to die. It was frantically releasing survival signals within my womb, even attempting to siphon away my last remaining bits of pheromones to keep its heart beating. Damn it! I blew out a string of bubbles underwater and forced my eyes open. I couldn't see a thing in the murky river, only the pale pillars of light from distant searchlights refracting through the surface. Ezra, you're a bastard. But you can't take this little life, who hasn't even seen the sun yet, to become a water ghost with you. In that moment, the instinct to survive overpowered all my exhaustion. I bit the tip of my tongue, using the taste of blood to stimulate my brain, which was about to shut down. My limbs began to paddle mechanically. Fighting against the current and avoiding the propellers of patrol boats, I swam desperately toward a drainage outfall near the bank. The oxygen in my lungs was about to run out. Just when I thought I was going to suffocate a second before reaching the shore, my fingers brushed against a rough, slippery stone wall. I dug my fingers dead tight into the crevices of the stone, my nails snapping, blood seeping out. Relying on that burst of strength, I forcibly dragged myself back from the brink of death. Cough, 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 bleg. The moment I climbed out of the drainage pipe, I vomited the accumulated water in my lungs along with my stomach acid. I rolled over, lying flat on my back on the moss-covered stone platform. The torrential rain was still falling. Rainwater cascaded down the drainage shaft, smashing against my face. I reached out and touched my stomach. Still there. You've got a tough life, kid. Panting, I looked up at that small patch of gloomy sky with blurred vision. The piercing sound of alarms echoed in the distance. The entire 3rd District of the Federation had been locked down. Theodore had gone mad. I could feel his pheromones in the air, spreading at a terrifying speed, like an inescapable net, ready to turn the city upside down. I had to get moving. I didn't have much time left. I performed a crude surgery on myself. No anesthesia. When I fell into the river, a piece of underwater rebar had sliced open my right leg, leaving a gash deep enough to show bone. If I didn't treat it, the infection would kill me. HSSS. I bit down on a dirty rag. Cold sweat rained down, and tears blurred my vision. It hurt. It hurt like a motherfucker. All Theodore's fault. After treating the wound, I slumped into a pile of abandoned tires and downed a massive gulp of strong liquor. The TV in the auto repair shop was broadcasting an emergency news bulletin. The Supreme Executive of the Federation has issued a citywide red notice. All exits are locked down. Authorities will dig 3 feet into the ground to find. A photo of me flashed across the screen. It was my file photo from 3 years ago. In the picture, I was wearing my agent uniform, my eyes sharp and full of spirit. Who could have imagined that the current me would be hiding in a garbage dump like a drowned rat, carrying the child of my pursuer in my belly? Why do you have to go this far, Ezra? I laughed self-deprecatingly, playing with that coin in my hand. This was the very coin I had left on Theodore's nightstand back then. I didn't even know when I had casually pocketed it. Maybe subconsciously, I thought the damn thing could ward off evil. Suddenly, the sound of the rain outside stopped. A spine-chilling, dead silence enveloped the entire auto repair shop. No footsteps, no sirens. Only that familiar, overwhelmingly oppressive scent of frozen earth pheromones. Like a pair of invisible hands choking my throat. He was here, faster than I had imagined. I gave a bitter smile, flipped the coin into the air, and caught it. Nowhere left to run. The main doors of the auto repair shop were pushed open silently. Standing in the doorway, backlit by the light, was a tall figure. He didn't bring that squad of noisy special forces with him. He was alone. His black trench coat was soaked through, clinging tightly to his body, outlining the taut lines of his muscles. Water droplets slid down his pale cheeks. Those eyes were heavily bloodshot, glowing with a terrifying intensity. Theodore. He looked even more pathetic than me, the fugitive. We just stared at each other across the floor littered with scrap metal and grease. Neither of us spoke. How did you find me? I broke the silence first. Theodore didn't answer. He walked toward me step by step. When he was 3 meters away, I raised the screwdriver in my hand. Don't come any closer, I warned. I'm emotionally unstable right now. I might hurt someone. Theodore turned a deaf ear. He walked right up to me, completely ignoring the weapon pressed against his chest. And then, right in front of that pile of filthy tires, placing himself above the dignity of the imperious supreme executive of the Federation, he dropped to his knees. He knelt on one knee, his line of sight level with mine. Theodore reached out, grasped my blood and grime-covered hand, and pressed his face against my palm. He was shaking. I thought you were dead. When I jumped down, you weren't in the water. There was nothing. I thought I lost you. For the second time, warmth seeped into my palm. I froze. Those were tears. The Theodore known as the Mad Dog and the Living Llama was crying. Ezra. He looked up. In those eyes that were always so dark and ruthless, there was now only pure despair. You win. I won't arrest you anymore, and I won't lock you up. Please, just don't die. At that very moment, I felt the little life in my womb give me a hard kick, as if scolding me, look at what you've done. Look how badly you've bullied your baby daddy. I was carried onto the aircraft by Theodore. This time, there were no shackles and no collar. He wrapped me in a thick blanket and held me in his arms the entire time, refusing to let go for even a second. The aircraft was set to autopilot, destined for the top-floor intensive care sector of the Federation Central Hospital. Don't go to the hospital. I leaned against his chest, weakly tugging at his collar. Go to your place. Theodore frowned, instinctively wanting to refuse. Your injuries. There are too many eyes and ears at the hospital. I cut him off. My condition is highly unusual. Once it's exposed, those old men doing genetic research will slice me up. Theodore was silent for 2 seconds, then changed the flight path. All right, we're going home. He looked down and kissed my icy forehead. I've already dispatched a private medical team there. His pheromones flowed continuously into my body. Above the frozen earth, it felt as though a flower had bloomed. The sensation was too comfortable, so comfortable I wanted to sleep. Theodore? I called out to him groggily. Yeah. If, I said with my eyes closed, my voice very soft. If in the end, only one can be saved, who do you choose? The arms holding me instantly tightened. There are no ifs. Theodore's voice was right by my ear, spoken through gritted teeth. The adult and the child. I want both. Greedy. I let out a soft laugh. That doesn't align with the objective laws of nature. On my turf, I am the law. He rested his chin on the top of my head, his voice muffled. Ezra, 3 years ago you lied to me once. If you dare lie to me again this time, then what will you do? I'll destroy this world and bury it with you. He said it with utter absolute seriousness. I knew he was capable of doing it. Lunatic. I cursed him in my heart, but I buried my face into his chest and drifted off to sleep with peace of mind. I lay in Theodore's bed for half a month. For that half month, my body was covered in various tubes, sustaining my life and the child's. Although the speed of my genetic collapse was temporarily controlled by Theodore's high-concentration pheromones, it was like a ticking time bomb that could detonate at any moment. The doctor said the only solution was to undergo a complete marking again. But this carried risks. Because I was a secondary differentiated omega, my reproductive cavity was unstable. During the deep marking process, if my body couldn't withstand the impact of an S-class alpha, I could end up permanently crippled. We're not doing it. After hearing the doctor's plan, Theodore threw him right out of the room. There has to be another way. There definitely is. I leaned against the headboard, peeling an apple. Theodore, what are you afraid of? I took a bite of the apple. Crisp and sweet. Theodore abruptly stopped pacing and turned to glare at me. I'm afraid of killing you in bed. Still better than dying of an illness. I shrugged indifferently. To die beneath the peony flower, even as a ghost, I'd be a romantic. A Chinese idiom meaning, to die in the pursuit of love/lust is a worthy death. Ezra. Theodore's temples throbbed with anger. He rushed over and snatched my apple and the knife away. Can you take your own life a little more seriously? I am taking it seriously. I looked at him and dropped my smile. I know I'm gambling. If I win the bet, I get a wife, a kid, and a warm bed. If I lose, it's 2 lives gone at once, and you'll be freed. You won't have to spend the rest of your life watching over a sick invalid. I forbid you from saying things like that. Theodore half knelt by the bed, gripping my hand tight. His eyes were red again. He had become extremely prone to crying lately, acting just like a child. All right, I won't say it. I sighed and wrapped my fingers around his. Theodore, do you know why I left 3 years ago? Theodore's body stiffened. Because even back then, I already felt the precursors of a genetic collapse. I looked into his eyes, calmly speaking the secret I had hidden for 3 years. The average lifespan of an S-class agent is only 30 years. That's the price of genetic modification. I didn't want you to watch me slowly decay, turning into a piece of trash who couldn't even hold a gun steady. I wanted to die out there, die with some dignity. But I didn't expect. I looked down at my swelling belly. God played a joke on me. He gave me this child, and he also gave me a chance to keep living. This was the truth. Although the child's existence increased the burden on my body, it was also feeding back into my system, forming a miraculous balance. Theodore, this child is yours. It's like you. Tough. And I'm tough too. I leaned in and pressed my forehead against his. Come on. Mark me. That's an order, Commander. Chapter 5. It was a long and agonizing session of lovemaking, almost like being subjected to a death by 1,000 cuts. Theodore released his pheromones completely. The dense scent of frozen earth almost drowned me. He was incredibly careful, but the rejection reaction was still severe. High fever, spasms, pain. It felt as though my gland was being seared by a red-hot iron. Ugh! It hurts. Bear with it, Ezra. Bear with it. Theodore kissed the corners of my eyes, my lips, my neck over and over again, desperately trying to distract me, until the final step. In that moment, the world seemed to collapse. But above the ruins, I felt an unprecedented, indestructible connection. Like 2 trees deep within the soil, their roots tightly intertwined, never to be separated again. I don't know how much time passed. Everything finally settled. I was drenched in sweat, lacking the strength to even move a single finger. Theodore held me, his chin resting in the hollow of my neck, breathing heavily. His canines had pierced the gland at the back of my neck, injecting the final and most crucial pheromones. This was a lifelong mark. Ezra, he whispered in my ear. You are mine now. This life, the next life, and the life after that, you are mine. I was so exhausted I couldn't even roll my eyes. Yes, yes, yes. Yours. You're such an idiot. After saying that, I completely lost consciousness. Wah! A loud, piercing cry broke the tranquility of the early morning. I lay on the operating table, the anesthesia not completely worn off, but my mind was clear. It was a boy. His cries were loud enough to shake the heavens. Just hearing it, I knew he inherited my lung capacity. Theodore was wearing sterile scrubs, holding that wrinkled little guy, as stiff as a board. A nurse tried to take over, but was scared off by a single glare from him. He carried the baby over to me, his expression more serious than if he were signing a multi-billion-dollar arms contract. Ezra, he called me. Yeah. He's so ugly. I struggled to raise my hand to hit him, but lacked the strength. Get lost. Theodore laughed. It was the first time I had ever seen him smile so foolishly. He lowered his head and carefully brought the baby closer to my face. He was pretty ugly, bright red like a hairless monkey. But those eyes, even though they hadn't opened yet, the shape of the eyelids was a carbon copy of Theodore's. Let's give him a name. I thought for a moment. Let's call him Owen. All right, whatever you say. Theodore compromised without any principles. Official name Owen. Nickname can be Coin. Can you be a little more cultured? Then let's call him Bite Mark. Theodore, are you itching for a beating? 3 years later. The evening breeze was slightly cool, blowing away the heat of the day. I leaned back in a lounge chair on the terrace, holding a glass of red wine. Down on the lawn, one large and one small figure were messing around. More accurately, it was a one-sided bullying. 3-year-old Owen was now the little tyrant of the entire household. He was riding on Theodore's shoulders, waving a toy water gun and shouting, "Run faster!" The supreme executive who once made the entire Federation tremble in fear was now lying on the grass with zero dignity, letting his son treat him like a horse. He even very cooperatively let out a few horse neighs. Swirling the wine in my glass, I watched this scene and couldn't help but smile. Although my body hadn't completely returned to its absolute peak state, the genetic disease was completely stabilized. The current me was still an S-class agent, just an S-class who took care of a kid. Theodore suddenly looked up toward me on the terrace. Even from this distance, I could still feel the warmth in his eyes, a warmth that belonged exclusively to me. He patted our son's butt, handed him over to the servants, and bounded up to the terrace in a few quick strides. Sneaking a drink? He snatched my wine glass and downed the rest in one gulp. Just one sip, I argued. The doctor said appropriate alcohol consumption helps with blood circulation. Which quack doctor said that? I'll go shut down his hospital tomorrow. Theodore snorted, bent down, and scooped me up from the lounge chair into his arms. What are you doing? Our son is asleep. Time to get down to business. He carried me toward the bedroom, his eyes darkening. Today is our anniversary. What anniversary? The anniversary of the day you slept with me and ran away. I rolled my eyes speechlessly and reached up to wrap my arms around his neck. Theodore. Do you still have that coin? I do. He threw me onto the bed, pressed down on me, and pulled that exact coin out from under the pillow. This time, I'm not taking your money. He kissed my lips, his voice muffled against mine. I want you to use the rest of your life to pay me back.